Welcome to Triple Threat, the podcast with Jamel President, where it's good news and good vibes all the time, baby.
When we left Portugal to come play with you in your system, Jamel, it was the best thing for Shane because you pushed him to do other things outside his box.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month. Hey, what's up, guys? Coming up next, we got Aaron Lucas from Richland Northeast in Columbia, South Carolina. Aaron had a great career at USC. I think he was 1997 Nike All-American, and we all, as players, wish, we can get our numbers called for that award. So big ups to him about that. But in our interview, we talked about one thing about BJ Mackey, about wanting to be just like BJ, wanting to have the notoriety and the write-ups like BJ, and that helped propelled him into a stellar career. Great interview. Can't wait to get into it. All right, let's go. So I ain't gonna keep you, man. Everybody busy. I just wanted to, part of this podcast just to, talk to, college players, NBA players, coaches, and try to bring that wealth of knowledge to the up and coming student athletes and families as well.
Right. Yeah.
So take us back. We talk to our guests as always. A beginning and part of your journey, whether it be rec department, the intermediate years. Take us back to those times where young Aaron started to really was introduced to the sport per se. Take us back to that.
Really, football is and still is my first love. So I actually started out, first sport I actually played was soccer. That was the first thing that was my first introduction into team sports. And then it went to football. Mm-hmm. My older brother played football, so I wanted to be like him.
For sure.
So I wanted to dabble into football, and then from football, I got into Parks and Rec up here in Columbia. And just started hooping a little bit. Didn't really take it serious, but it was more so something else to do. Play in the neighborhood. It's just fun. Football was kind of my thing. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
But, really, it was just, I would say, I didn't start hooping until I might have been 5th grade, maybe.
Wow.
That's when I first my first recreational experience, like my first actual team atmosphere type thing.
And you're a native of Columbia, correct? South Carolina?
Native of Columbia, rooted out of Charleston, but I grew up here in Columbia.
What's rooted out of Charleston mean? So
a lot of people ask that question because they like, you always talk about Charleston, you always, everything. Everybody in my family but me is from Charleston.
Okay.
Like my brother and sister were both born down there. I was born actually in Malden when my parents relocated from Charleston to Malden, South Carolina, which is up in Greenville for those who don't know. So I was born up there, and then when my parents separated, my mom came. She didn't go back home. She came to Columbia. My dad went back home. So
gotcha.
When I say rooted, everybody in my family, literally everybody,
for sure,
but me.
For
so
sure. That makes sense. That makes sense. Now I understand the terminology when you say rooted.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it was breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. You hear?
Okay. Say that one more time.
No, I was just listening to you. You were just saying. I was just saying that. Yeah, I see what you meant when you say rooted. I see what you meant now.
Yeah. Deeply rooted. And I try to make sure I stand on that. Just being and that's more of a thing now. People want to make sure they understand what being Gullah, being Geechee is. I spent a lot of time down there, obviously with my parents separated. So my summers were always down in Charleston, James Island, downtown.
For sure.
And then, of course, every other night, weekend, you know how that go if you grew up in a single parent household. So
Right.
deeply rooted. Spent some time down there on the ball courts. Watch guys like Melvin and Jenkins play at Burke. That's
Right.
where all my family went to school at. So, deeply rooted in the culture and in the, family and everything else. So, but as far as Columbia, that's where, all of my youth, my growing up, my friends, everything really came out of Columbia. So try to make sure there's a distinction between the two because people always see me kind of represent too. I don't talk about Columbia as much, but
Right.
because it's kind of known.
For sure.
So
and you're coming up, and ask my guests all the time about their experience, in the rec departments, in those programs.
Right.
What's your take on the programs you grew up in? Because everybody had a certain, whether it was a father figure, was a community person that kind of introduced them and kind of coached them or supported them. In addition to the programs that they were in, like how were they beneficial or non-beneficial to you?
First person that really kind of took me in, a guy named Lorenzo Martin, one of my best friend's father. He kind of introduced me into the rec league and kind of took me under his wing. And that was a great experience because, again, I didn't know anything other than football. I didn't really understand basketball from a standpoint of being around people, the competitive nature of it. So he really kind of put me on. Killian Park is the park that we hooped in. And then from there, like my mom just started taking me around different places because she saw I started to have a little affinity for it.
Mm.
And I really cut my teeth as far as just understanding the game and really knowing you got to be a dog when you get out there is at Greenview Park, which is fairly well known just about everywhere, especially if you come through Columbia. Everybody knows Greenview Park. So,
Right.
From there it was, Killian, Greenview, probably the notable ones, Hyde Park, Lower Park in the city. And from there, one of my closest friends that grew up with me in the neighborhood, Bryant Latimer, his dad took me under his wing as far as AAU is concerned. That's kind of my first taste of AAU. And then, that was middle school time.
Right.
That was all, we playing in the street on the blacktop. He wanted to put some guys together from the neighborhood. So we go down to Myrtle Beach. We play at, I think we played a couple places in Charlotte and in Rock Hill area, and of course in Columbia and Sumter.
Right.
And so that was kind of my introduction to travel ball and just getting out there with AAU. And it was fun. We had a good time, but again, my heart was still with football. So I just did it because everybody in the neighborhood was kind of rocking with it.
That's interesting.
And from there, to answer the question, as far as the good and the bad, the good was I had, men, father figures around me, where I could see that bond, kind of understand that bond. And then I had some really solid dudes around me that could push me and, just keep challenging me and kind of tell me you can hoop.
Right.
You can actually hoop. And it wasn't until playing for the Raging Bulls, which was run by John Brown up here, God rest the dead, is when I really saw basketball in its full authenticity, as far as being in a hoop culture.
Right.
2-a-days. I'm 13, 14 years old. We had 2-a-days at Friars Gate Park, which is on the other side of town. But it was 2-a-days. We running plays. We got a system. You got conditioning
On the park?
at the park level. This is AAU. This is Raging Bulls. This is before I know Dion Bethea, who really kind of elevated the AAU scene in South Carolina. This predates Dion, and I think Dion took the blueprint from John.
Right.
Because John passed away, so it was a void until Dion came through. But as far as the actual hoop, we were 2-a-days on Saturdays. Wow. It's like 9 o'clock, we get a break, and then we go again.
Wow.
Running sets. This is YBOA, so I guess this was kind of the equivalent of EYCBL or whatever it's called now.
Right.
So this was taking some of the top dudes in the city and putting them all together and really trying to develop a team.
Right.
So that was my first experience. So again, to kind of tie it back to your question, the bad was I was never a part of a situation like that. So that kind of turned me off. You know what I mean? When you in the park and you just hooping and you just getting it in, and then now you got all this structure. Like, I don't know if I ain't with all this.
Right.
I just get these shots up. Let's get up and down. Let's do what we do at the park, and let's keep it moving.
Right.
But again, that discipline, that structure, really, I would say, laid the foundation for kind of everything else that happened afterward.
So, passing intermediate years in the Raging Bulls and playing, obviously you're going to transition into high school. What were your challenges in the high school? Who were ahead of you, and how did you, approach that? Because some high school players don't get their chance to really play until they sophomore, junior year because they got a lot of competition in front of them. What was your situation? Who was the person that you look up to and challenged you the whole time?
Actually an interesting story. Going into high school again, football was my main thing. High school coaches wanted me to come play football. But my mom kind of nixed that. She's like, nah, you ain't playing football. I'm like, I'm playing since 3rd grade. Like, what's up?
Right.
That kind of crushed me. So my alternative was the next sport that I played was basketball. Right. So she sent me to Richland Northeast because Carl Williams, again, God bless, one of the greatest mentors, one of the greatest men, greatest coaches that has ever coached the game in South Carolina, nationwide, that matter. She wanted me to play for him. He was good friends with my uncle. And they grew up at Booker T. Washington, ran that crew at Flora with Xavier McDaniel and Tyrone Corbin and all. And so she wanted me to play for a legend. The year I come in is the year he goes to Lower Richland and Gary Fulmer comes to Richland Northeast. So now I'm in a weird space.
Yeah.
However, during that time, that's 93, 94 when I came in. That's the year they had Corey Reggie Todd, Nikki Davis, Mike Byers. They were nationally ranked. This was the team.
Right.
And there was a guy who was a freshman, Brad Hunter. He ended up transferring to Eau Claire, one of the coldest cats I know that hoop. He was kind of like the dude. You know what I mean? Corey, Reggie, Nick, they were all older, so they were on their way out. But Brad was going to be the next guy up. So, me getting there, trying out for the team, just want to see where I stood because, I heard about him. And people knew by then, middle school, I started dunking and a couple other things where I started making a little name for myself.
Right.
So it was like, all right, who this Brad dude? Let me see him.
For sure.
So they matched us up and we went at it for like 2 days for tryouts. And that kind of was like my introduction into that level. I felt like if I can hoop with Brad and I can compete for this job, I'm coming to get it.
For sure. For sure.
And so lo and behold, Brad ended up transferring to Eau Claire. which kind of opened the gate. Like,
Yeah, right.
when I tell you it's a story too, it's like, it's interesting how everything happened. Carl Williams leaving, and you know, if you know old school hooping, I wasn't gonna play as a freshman. Like you said, it was gonna be sophomore year. If I had to be special sophomore year, junior year, I get my chance, because you know Coach Williams kind of old school, and you had to earn everything.
For sure.
With Brad leaving, it was like a clean slate for Coach Foreman. Like, there was nothing really to build off of other than what he inherited,
Right.
and then what was coming. And then I was part of that class that came through, and I think we had a pep rally, little dunk contest type thing, and that was my first taste of like the hype.
Right. Right.
So I won the little dunk contest. This is my freshman year. I was probably 5'7", and people was just like, "Yo,
Right.
I didn't know you could get up like that, man. Like, boy, you getting down."
Right.
And I was like, you know, yeah, I guess.
For sure.
Like,
Still wasn't sure yet.
nah, I wasn't sure, because there was, I mean, even with all that left, again, with Nikki and the Tide brothers, there was still some dudes that were cold. Like, they could go, you know what I mean? And that kind of set a different tone and a trajectory for me, because I could do something that those cats, they couldn't do. They could hoop, but they weren't like athletes.
For sure. Big
And so that just put it on a whole different, you know, plateau. And then and I'm probably going long-winded, because these stories come and go, and they sit in my head. The motivation to be great was from BJ Mackey. And I tell this story all the time. It's ironic. Before we started chopping it up, I watched matter of fact, you sent me the BJ interview.
Yeah.
And every time, B is like a big brother. We talk all the time and everything. But I tell this story all the time because he came to Irmo played Northeast. My freshman year, I was still on JV. This was early in the season. And he must have dropped about 32. Right?
Right.
All this hype, BJ Mackey, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's see, you know, what this
Sure.
dude is. You know what I mean? He from the other side of town.
For sure.
So he drops 32 or whatever, they beat us, and he starts leaving out the gym. I mean, the girls, people, everybody coming up to him to sign autographs, just do all this stuff. And I sat there on the bleachers, and I was just shaking my head like, this will never happen again in this gym, unless it's me. Like, that was the spark that was like, there won't be another dude that comes in this gym.
Wow.
That's gonna get this much shine from the home team. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And then just leave.
For
nah.
Sure.
So that's where the hunger started.
In this timeout message, we got Barrington Huntley.
Amateurism, you know, when you get certified by the NCAA, you have the academic certification. That's kind of what we just went over. But then you have the amateurism component as well. And amateurism, all it's making sure is that a student athlete hasn't professionalized themselves and isn't accepting money to play sports. So it's a series of questions that will be asked when the student registers. You know, they want to know what teams you've been on, have you signed any professional contracts, that kind of stuff. And I can go ahead and tell you that 94% of students that come through our certification process don't have any issue with amateur. You know, it's a very small percentage, just making sure that they're not accepting any money above actual necessary expenses for their participation in sports.
Now let's get back to the interview.
And so as your freshman, you started playing, what was your numbers like, you know, because again, it's different levels of transitioning mentally where these experiences is, you know, confirming where your path is going to take you. You know, talking to BJ, since you brought that up, he always talked about, you know, his his summers, his Nikes, his travel stuff, and looking at your your playbook here, 3 times All Region, 2-time All State, North South All Star, 1998 Player of the Year, 1997 All American. When did those things start happening? As far as in high school, did it happen from camps? When did those things start happening? How did it make you feel as a player? Because we all just talking to BJ and Marvin Orange. Before your time, we were all looking into the little scouting report. The little black and white pages that come out. It wasn't really the social media at that time. So,
Right.
So how did that make you feel as a player, just coming up and getting all this notoriety and the hunger start happening, the experiences start happening? What made that jump from getting those notoriety, being from South Carolina?
Again, I was chasing it. Like I said, BJ kind of set the bar as far as what I was looking for. And so I was chasing that. And the newspaper clippings were everything back in the day.
For sure.
And it wasn't just, your last name. You wanted your whole name. That means you were in double figures.
For sure.
And so my freshman year, I played JV half the year, and then I got moved up to varsity at the end of the year. So I think JV, I might have been averaging like 19. And, again, the comp was solid. It wasn't no pushover. It wasn't like I would say JV is now, but it was like some real comp.
For sure.
And then I moved up, and we had to play teams like Sumter. So back in the early 90s, Sumter was loaded.
Right.
And playing Irmo and playing Hillcrest Dizelle and teams like that. And so I had to go through this transition of the speed of the game, the size of the players, the athleticism, the strength. But in my mind, I was still chasing that moment.
For sure.
You feel me? Like, I wanted it then. I knew it. In hindsight, I knew it couldn't have happened then because there was a lot I still needed to learn. But in my mind, as a 9th grader moving up to varsity and having the hype in the school, I was chasing what BJ had. I wanted to go in other gyms, and people knew from the moment we walked in, yeah, that's Richland Northeast, but that's that guy.
For sure. For sure.
That's him right there.
That's him right there.
And so going to different camps, playing more part games, against the old heads and just trying to learn and just get beat up and really, just trying to hone the craft. Going into my sophomore year now, Coach Fulmer kind of gave me the keys. After going to camp, after team camps and different things like that, kind of setting myself apart. Really just, again, showing that hunger in practices, showing that hunger in the summer games, showing that hunger in park and rec. Like my sophomore year, it was time to take off.
For sure.
And it started to do that. So once I started seeing my name in the paper and, you get those clips, sometimes you see your face like halfway in one of the frames, they took a shot of somebody else, but then you like in there. I'm like, yeah, see, I was in, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that from that point, again, the hunger was fueled.
Right.
Because I knew I was on the right track. And so, sophomore year was go time. I got moved to the point. Really started learning more about systems, understanding game. Like Gary Fulmer was great with strategy. So, there's a lot of things I learned between my freshman year and my sophomore year and being given the keys.
For sure.
And so, once the notoriety came, I didn't really feel it and I didn't really understand it till later on, like tail end of my junior year, summer of my junior year, going into my senior year, where I stood. I wouldn't even think about college. I wouldn't even think about anything. All I wanted was with BJ.
Right.
That was my sole motivation.
That segued into my next question, because you wasn't thinking about college and thinking about the next level, when did that come up? You know what I mean? Because and you're absolutely dead on. about the mentality, right? Being that you were a great student athlete, we all was moving off of hunger. We really didn't have a path set ahead of us to say, hey, look, I want you, this college should be great for you because this system is XYZ. This college is not going to be good because you don't like the cold weather and they're really, really cold. This situation might not be good for you because you're a point guard and this a kid there that's a sophomore right now, you got to fight for 3 years. So I didn't have, and it sounded like, when you're not thinking about that initially, how did you make your choice? What situations, what options did you have from other colleges, and how did you end up in South Carolina? Because again, I'll let you go. A lot of players make choices because of comfortability, what they were comfortable in, not actually what actually worked for them as a player. So frame that for me.
Mm-hmm. So junior year comes around, things are looking on the up and up. I have good summers, played a little bit of AAU, but I wasn't really into it, for just being naive, not understanding the importance of it. Still chasing what BJ had, but I start feeling some of it. Early on in my junior year, I think I had a game I scored 31, and the buzz starts happening. Now I'm starting to get a little taste of that when I walk in different gyms and go in different places. And I could go to every park in the city and hoop comfortably. You know what I mean? You probably understand what I mean by comfortably, because you can't always just go everywhere and people show you love. So that's when I knew I was like, all right, I'm good. I'm getting there. And to address, the student athlete part, I never, again, without having that knowledge, that awareness, people kind of explaining the trajectory that I was going in, the things that could be ahead of me, I didn't really understand and couldn't appreciate the academic side of it and what that meant. So junior year, going into my senior year, my school counselor talks to me and my mom about, my grades and how things are shaping out. So I had to end up going to Oak Hill for summer of 97. I was at Oak Hill for summer school, and really the plan was to go there. And I had no idea what Oak Hill was. Zero. Clueless, blind. I was just clueless until I got up there, and it's like, oh, okay. Stackhouse, like Quay Alexander's, like these. I know these names, but I don't like. We in the middle of nowhere. This means nothing to me.
Right.
We didn't win state that year. My brother to this day, Bubba Kenlock won. North Charleston won. Him, CJ, and they won it that year. So I was still hungry. I was still upset. I was still frustrated. And I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I'm trying to put all this stuff together. We lifting every day, we working out. College coaches are coming every day. And it's just like, all right, so this is a thing.
For sure.
Like, this is a thing. Patino's there, Dave Odom's there, Eddie Fogel is there, Tubby Smith is there. Rick Barnes came up. Like, all these coaches are there every day.
It's crazy.
And it's just like, this is a whole thing.
Right.
Like, I can do something. Like, this is stuff you see Allen Iverson, Georgetown. I see y'all playing down at Charleston. I'm like, oh, this is how this works.
For sure.
And so,
let me jump in right quick before you continue. I went to Fork Union, and just the same thing happened where they have you out there nowhere. You're gonna have a choice but to work.
Right.
You know what I mean? There ain't no distraction, ain't no girls. You got to walk around all 40 miles just to get in town. You know what I mean? So it makes you focus, and you have no choice but to work. But I just wanted to intersect with that and bring light to, you have to make those sacrifices to get to the next level.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't think, had someone told us what we were about to go into, I had to shine my shoes every morning, make my bed at 6 a.m. Like, it was a military setting, but I had to do that in order to get to the next level. And I think, had we known that, someone tell us that, we might have, backed out of it, because, not knowing what we're getting into could be a little bit more uncomfortable. But I just wanted to intersect that. I didn't know you went to Oak Hill as well.
For sure. Yeah. It was kind of like what you mentioned earlier about being comfortable. And so my comfort zone was obviously hooping in Columbia. And really the thing that was even more troubling then is my summers were always in Charleston.
Hmm.
So summer school in the middle of nowhere versus being in the city with my family and you know, kicking it, going to the park here and there, watching midnight hoops
For sure.
late at night. All of that's taken away. My grandfather passes that same summer, and it was just like, nah,
Right.
this ain't it.
Right.
Like this is not what I want to do. And again, to your point, there was nobody to say, this what you're doing now is the best thing for what you don't even know is coming.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it was, if I had some of the older heads that I have now that would have said, Luke, Columbia's gonna be there.
Right.
Don't worry about it. Just do your Oak Hill thing. That's gonna take you further. Like if I had those people in my ear then, or if I would have known them then, that's more the important part. Then I likely would have stayed at Oak Hill and gotten what I need. So I come back, had a good summer, start getting those interest letters, start getting those phone calls. Matter of fact, that same summer was Nike. So I was at Oak Hill and then I went to Nike for a week, playing against, obviously the top players in the country. And now it's just like, where do I fit? Again, when you go to a Nike camp or you go to Adidas or whatever, and you don't have anybody explain to you what that is, you don't know how to go into it.
Sure. From the mental standpoint.
Yeah, I didn't know how to go into hooping at Nike.
Right.
Against,
because if you had somebody say, hey, well, look, these major colleges are going to be there. You play the point guard position. Then look at the colleges that got seniors that's leaving the institution. So this is what you need to do. You need to be more of a point guard presence than a two guard. Or just all kind of variables that we just go in there just straight up hooping. And then you put up 30 points a game, but they already got someone that can put up 30. So that might not be good for them because that's not what they're looking for. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just crazy. Go ahead, though.
And that's exactly what I feel like you miss when you go there. Because you think of it as you think of it as just regular hooping, but cats out of you got to go in there with a focus and a purpose.
Yes. And
you got to understand to level up, you got to know exactly what you're doing. Right. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just hooping. Like, all right, I'm a dish. I'm gonna move around. The other cats is getting off. I'm like, man, they selfish. Like, them boys is selfish, man. Like, they ain't. But in hindsight, they trying to eat.
They're trying to eat. Right.
So, go up there. Had a pretty decent camp. Other schools started showing interest after that, and I get back to Columbia. And senior year comes around and it's like, I'm on 10. Like every gym, like what I was chasing from my freshman year has manifested itself my senior year. There was no gym I couldn't go in that wasn't full on a Tuesday or Friday night. The hype was there, the whole autograph thing. I was content. Like I made it.
For sure.
And then, it's just me, my mom, and my brother. My sister was in college, so there wasn't nothing she could tell me about the process of what I was going through. Coach Fulmer really couldn't explain it because he had a couple players that played in college, and he had been around JoJo at that time, but there was nobody that could sit me down and just be like, hey, here's what's about to happen.
Right.
When Coach Kress calls, when Eddie Fogler calls, when Rick Barnes calls, when Jim Boeheim calls, when all these people call, here's what you need to be understanding, and here's what you need to start looking out for yourself. And I didn't have that. So again, senior year was takeoff year, and it was a movie, borderline a movie. And then it was time to start the process, the recruiting process. Letters come, phone calls come, coaches at games, you know, the whole thing is just like, what do you do? Like, what am I? So my decision to stay at Carolina really was threefold. One, I got to stay close to home, because again, my grandfather passed the summer I was at Oak Hill. I think if that didn't happen, I would have probably looked at things different.
For sure.
But again, as we started, I'm deeply rooted in Charleston.
For sure.
So family means a lot to me, and that happening was like, I can't be away from my people that far. Like that,
Right.
That's that
Right.
comfort zone.
Right.
So USC just came off the '97 SEC championship, NCAA tournament run. Somebody who I really idolized from a distance was Melvin Watson. Again, I watched him play at Burke.
For sure.
And so seeing him, obviously BJ being there, it was just like, yeah, I'm about to do this.
For sure.
And the last thing was, you know, now I'm chasing a new thing. Same person, new thing. B was a McDonald's All-American, went to Carolina. I think he was either freshman of the year or you know, first team or something like that as a freshman. Now I got a new bar, you know what I mean?
For sure.
I'm going to Carolina. I didn't put much thought into it. Miami and Syracuse were the two other schools I think that I was considering. But the most tangible thing I had was Carolina.
Right.
That was the most tangible thing I had. Charleston was in the mix because obviously Coach Kretz, one of the greatest.
For sure.
And have an opportunity to play in the city.
Right.
Like that would have meant a lot to me as well, but it was the stages.
For sure. For sure.
Two different stages. And so I was like, you know what? Fogel is at my house. He's at the games every other day. I get to go to the games on a regular basis. I got the person who kind of, you know, fueled my fire to hoop. I got another guy I idolize. Like, this is a no-brainer.
Man, my question is, how was those practices though? Because, you know, playing with Mel, which is, you know, one of my best friends, you know, from, you know, seventh, because we rode, we used to tote, if you know, we used to tote all the time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Mel had legs, had legs and ass, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he was so strong.
And more now than then. Exactly.
So you know what I mean, and the competitive nature from BJ as well. I guess, you know, you learn a lot and competed at a high level, which made your game totally, you know, exceptional.
Right.
But what as a before we go into the next topic, I want the players understand this, being that not only, you know, had someone that you idolized, someone that you know wanted to compete with his accomplishments, like from your mental standpoint, right? Yeah, the hunger was there, but how do you approach that every day? Because I know some days you probably, you know, got the L, some days you got the W, but how do you approach it every day going back into practice?
I think the biggest thing that helped me was having the opportunity to play against them in the summers. So like when we played team camp my junior year, and then like we'd have some other times where we'd be down there, and Coach Fogel was like, you know, after camp, this is 11 o'clock at night, he's like, go out there. And I was hanging in there and I was doing my thing, and I was like, you know, I can you know, and one aspect of it was like, damn, that's BJ, like that's Mel, like
Right.
yo.
Right.
And then on the other hand, it was like that's still that dude that came in the gym, you know, 3 years ago and was signing autographs. I
Sure.
still got something to say to him.
For sure.
Hey, what's up, guys? Check this out. If you're coming into the Charleston area, or maybe leaving out the Charleston area, and you want to avoid long lines and be greeted by friendly, sweet people, go check out Mark over at Avis and Budget Car Rental at 7685 Northwoods Boulevard. When you go see Mark and you mention Triple Threat Podcast, you receive 30% discount on your rental. They also offer compact to large SUVs and vans to rent with quick, easy transaction. And check this out, and limited mileage on most rentals. So give Mark a call at 843-572-3190. Don't forget to mention Triple Threat Podcast.
So, you know, everything was where it needed to be. And then they turned up the heat. 5'11", 165 versus 6'1", 210. And 6'2", 185, 190.
Right.
It's like, all right,
Right.
I got some work to do.
For sure.
But I remember again distinctly my first when I got there, and this might have been summer of '98 after I graduated, and we had to report for summer school, you know, workouts and all of that stuff. And I saw BJ in the training room, and I just looked at him. I was like, you know what? All them records, I'm about to bust them. He just looked at me. He was like, all right, good luck. And from there, it was like, now I get to see you. I get to put my hands on you. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I get to put my hands on you now.
For sure.
And then I got introduced to BJ Mackey, you know, and his competitive nature. And then I understood what it took. Because as hard as he played, and some of the things people, you know, had to say about him, about how he played, that's how he prepared, that's how he practiced, that's how, I mean, I remember seeing fights in practice, seeing those things because of the competitive nature.
For sure.
But I also understood that his reputation, his accolades, all of that was stemmed from that.
Yes. Yes.
His desire to win, his desire to be the best, his desire to compete against whoever.
Right.
That's what was like, all right, this is what it's going to take. So I put on 20 pounds my freshman.
Wow. Wow. I
went from 165 to 185, bench pressing 300, you know, doing all this other stuff because of what he brought to the table from the competitive and the work standpoint, but also, like I said, when you got one of the best defenders in college basketball, Melvin Watson,
jeez, Christ,
putting 210 on you, it was like, you got to do something different or you're going to just shut up.
Right, right.
You ain't going to be able to talk to them boys if you ain't
right
lightweight. So,
and I know about and I heard about just shit. Mel and BJ had their own thing going on. So you get caught up in that web that's already, you know?
Yeah. So it was like, you know, you go into a Shark Tank and it's like you see why they had the success that they had in the you know, the things that you desire to do because of their success. You start to see it behind closed doors and you understand the whys behind closed doors.
Right.
And so, you know, I tried to take that into it and mimic a lot of what they were doing, but I wanted to elevate. I mean, me and B played one-on-one a lot after practices, and I don't care what he say. I used to
For sure.
bust his ass.
For sure. For sure.
But it's not a one-on-one game.
Right.
And so I learned more in doing that than I did having that ego trip.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Him walking out the gym pissed off, all that other stuff, that was a whole nother sidebar. But again, he's McDonald's All-American. He's the SEC champion. He's one of the best players in the conference. I ain't got nothing.
Right.
He got a state championship. I don't even have a state championship.
All that just adding the confidence to you.
Yeah.
So moving into after those guys left, and now we, like you said, different level. We're talking about now you're thinking next level, NBA, getting paid to put the thing in the hole. Tell me about that transition and how did, those things happen? Because, we look for an agent, we look for someone to represent us, to try to get us different looks. What happened in that transition, going from your junior to senior year and you turning professional?
I mean, it was, again, I think I was still in a position where I didn't have the mentorship. All right. The guys that I looked up to, the guys that I would say are big brothers to me, they were still trying to learn the game.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
B had his opportunity to go. He didn't take it. He came back. We played a year. Then he did the CBA and all this other stuff. So, we didn't have social media. You really didn't have that contact like that unless it was the summertime. So, those short times during the summer, there's not a lot you can get other than just a few tidbits. Sure. Mel was doing this thing overseas. So, the guys I needed to talk to and get that direct, hey, this is what's about to happen. This is how you need to prepare. This is, X, Y, and Z. I still didn't have it.
Right.
I had the local guys and I had guys who have done it, Tyrone Corbin, Xavier McDaniel, even Jermaine O'Neal, guys and stuff, that I played with in the summertime.
But the system changed when there's different times than with your current.
Right. So, but it still wasn't just somebody wrap their arms around you and be like,
for sure,
this is what you need to be doing. I attribute a lot of that success and a lot of my just ability to stick with chasing a dream was Marcus Saxon.
Oh, listen.
Yeah. And so I tell him to this day, I tell other people to this day, if I would have met Marcus Saxon in high school, my career would have went a lot further.
For sure.
Because he taught me that grind. He taught me how to do it. Again, he was still trying to figure a lot of things out for himself. So it wasn't much he could tell me about preparation to be a pro.
Right.
He could tell me how to go hard and go at your neck and not stop until you quit. Right. But he couldn't really tell me and explain to me the business.
For sure.
And so, my junior year, I had a decent year. The whole Carolina thing was a roller coaster. And then my senior year, matter of fact, let me back up. My junior year is the year Coach Fogler resigned. And we were going to play in the NIT at UConn. He told us that before we got on the plane.
Wow.
And we're playing against Karan Butler. And this is where things got really kind of weird for me as far as hooping and just my motivation and everything. We're playing in stores at UConn. And, we all chopping it up before the game. It's the end of the season. It's cold. It really doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Right. We're juniors. It's like whatever. Our coach is leaving. Like, we don't know what's happening next. And I remember specifically Karan Butler being like, man, I don't want to be here. Like, y'all boys go ahead and do this thing. And because nobody wanted to play.
For sure.
I mean, it was the weirdest feeling ever, like, because we didn't make it to the tournament. They didn't make it to the tournament. It's just like, we don't want this consolation prize.
Right.
Our coach just left. So it was just like, man, now what?
Right.
They won actually. So we were laughing about that after the game. It's like, hey, good luck. And we came back to Columbia, got no coaching staff. I actually started working out with the football team.
Interesting.
Lou Holtz and Joker Phillips was like, hey, you thought about playing football? Yeah, I might. Well, I don't even know what's about to happen next.
Right.
So why
Right.
not?
Right.
So at that point, I was just like, man, this is for the birds, man. I didn't sign up for this part of it.
Right.
And so, Dave Odom comes in. I still had some mixed feelings about him because he didn't recruit me. I got a bunch of little funny stories in between. All right.
For sure.
So, Dave didn't recruit me. Right.
Right.
And I felt some type of way because he recruited James Griffin.
James Griffin. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So he recruited James. Now, that same 97 summer, I played a little bit of AAU and we played them at Irmo. It was him and I think they called him Tick or Squirt. He played up at Woodmont, Dennis Cannon. And the two of them were like legends up there.
Right.
But they were on the same squad. And it was me, Ed Scott, Rolando Howell, Ivan Howell. We had our little crew down here. We bust their heads up there. And Dave was there. And I was just like, I know, because I got busy. Like, it was personal.
For sure.
And so they never called and never, like, worked out. And so the first day after Dave's press conference, I told him that. I was like, man, I bust your guy's ass and you didn't like nothing. So I was already feeling some type of way when he got there. But, once we settled in and got things going, his system, and this goes back to another point you made earlier about understanding school systems, styles of play, locations, all of that other stuff. His system suited me better than what Eddie Fogler's system did. Now, Eddie Fogler's system, that North Carolina system, helped me as a player,
right,
and made me a better pro.
Right.
But as far as what the expectations were and what people wanted to see and what they thought they were going to see from me didn't happen until Odom got there. So
Randolph
this is my
Childress.
Yeah.
The system. So, I wanted to go to Wake too. Yeah.
Right. And it was just like it couldn't have been a better scenario on my last year.
For sure.
Where I got to have a little bit more freedom, put up a little bit better numbers, show a lot of what people thought they were going to see from my high school days.
Right.
And we get through there, we lose in the NIT finals, obviously devastated because I don't even know what's going to happen yet. I don't have a great relationship with this new coaching staff. I mean, there was no problems, no ill wills, but again, I was with the previous staff for 3 years. Like, you build a certain rapport, and I've known Fogler since, my junior year in high school. And I got you for 1 year, 6 months, really.
Right.
And so after that, and my NIT numbers were crazy. I thought I played well. And at that time, you probably know, Portsmouth was the goal. Like, I gotta get, like, that's when you start understanding, hooping, when you know where to be. Exactly. I was like, you go to Portsmouth, then you go to Vegas, then you go to Chicago.
Right.
And so I was like, I need to know how this works. Nobody's telling me anything. I don't know nothing. I'm like, somebody got to plug me in. Like, what's going on? And I'll never forget it to this day. I got a phone call from Ernie Nestor, who was assistant coach at the time. He calls me on a Tuesday night, about 9 o'clock. And he says, are you interested in going to Portsmouth? What do you mean, am I interested? Of course. Like, you should be telling me what I need to be doing. So it's like, all right, they called, they want you to come up. I was just checking to make sure. It's like, all right, yeah. Whatever. Just let me know what I need to do. And he calls back 30 minutes later. And he's like, well, they didn't hear back from you in time. They got your alternate.
Dang.
And when I say that was my first probably one of my first heartbreak from this hoop thing.
Mm.
And I just sat there on my couch in my apartment, what was that all about?
Mm.
And so from that point, I started working. I went to a place I did my internship, and I just started working. I graduated, started working.
Wow.
Played in a little semi-pro league with BJ. I played in this little semi-pro league. I was working a 9 to 5, and I think the Low Gators had reached out.
Mm.
And I had already heard the stories about, what was it, NBDL at that time?
Correct. Yep. Yep.
And I was just like, man, I'm making more money doing my 9 to 5. I was already still a little bitter from the whole Portsmouth thing. It's like, man, I'm not about to go down there and make $20,000.
Right.
I know I'm better than that.
Right.
And it's not leading to nowhere. Like,
Right.
he didn't go to the league. Grant didn't go to the league. Like,
Right.
I'm not about to mess with that.
In this timeout message, we got Barrington Huntley.
That's the plan right now. So for students enrolling next year, the year after, they have a lot of flexibility that I kind of went over earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But the plan is to go back to normal. I will say when it comes to the test score right now, there is it's called the Standardized Test Score Task Force that has been put together. And that is going to look at whether there needs to be any adjustments or potential elimination of the test score requirement from NCAA legislation altogether. So that's something to keep an ear out for, just to see if that's going to change. Nothing has come out of the group yet. There's been a few meetings, but once something does come out, for sure, definitely we can get that communicated and kind of be looking for that. We'll see.
Sure.
Now let's get back to the interview.
And so one of my former teammates, his old coach from Lithuania, used to come and watch him play and be there all the time. Lo and behold, he was an agent. He calls me out the blue, and he's like, "Are you interested in hooping overseas?" It's like, I don't even know what that means, but yeah, I guess so. Are they paying?
Right.
And he's like, "Well, we'll bring you out for a tryout. They'll fly you out, and we'll see what goes from there." And I was like, "Okay, like all right."
Right.
So I packed my bag for a week, went out there, tried out for the two biggest teams out there. Ended up signing with one of them.
Wow.
And that's how it happened. Like,
But
it was
you got to think about that. Think about, the whole preparation and the work we put into it and the accolades we get, and then boom, it has nothing to do with talent. It's all about resources and communication. You know what I'm saying? And even not about education, because a well-informed person can make a better decision than a well-educated person can.
Right.
It's all about It's all about information. So I find it interesting that, that happened, and you find your way through that situation. So moving forward, did you sign with the agent, and how long did your career last after you started, overseas?
Well, it was over there is real different. So
Right.
I didn't necessarily sign with him. I just stuck with him because
Sure.
he put me on.
Right.
And so that first year was difficult because I'm in a country I've never even heard of.
Right.
It was a blessing because basketball is their number one sport, but the adjustments in the game, again, style of play, understanding systems, like it was a tough first year. But I had a cat who his name just went blank on me. Steve Woodbury, played at Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
He got traded to the team late in the season. And so he kind of helped mentor and kind of coach me through. And he was just like, listen, you're over here, you're getting paid to do what you do best.
Mm.
And then that kind of registered.
Right.
What I did best wasn't, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but what I did best wasn't necessarily to play a PG, run an offense, try to get 9 assists a game and score, 3 or 4 points.
Right.
My whole career was based off my athleticism and me being able to put the ball in the hole.
For sure.
And so from that point, like everything took off.
Mm.
Like I just said, you know what? Just go hoop. If they send you home, they send you home. But just go do what you got to do. And then it took off from there. And so, I was there for a year. No, I was there for 2 years. They put me on a pedestal. I dunk champion, player of the year, all this other great stuff. And then my next heartbreak happens. I start getting some interest from, I think it was the Mavericks and the Celtics.
Right.
A couple scouts came and watched us play because we had another cat that got drafted by San Antonio on my team.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always had NBA guys coming out to our game. So I re-signed a deal. And I'm always transparent because I mentor and I talk to kids and hoopers all the time. I re-signed a deal, I think it was 1.4 for 5 years.
Right.
I'm already thinking I'm rich with the little bit of money I was getting.
For sure.
So you put me in that category, I'm like, yo.
Right. Right.
But then there's the business of overseas, and that's a whole nother conversation. So I come home, I'm working out, I'm hooping, not even understanding at that time how to be a pro.
For sure.
I thought getting better and working on my game was playing pickup. Lift weights, get a couple shots up here and there, but you got to get your runs in.
For sure.
Messed my ankle up 2 days before I was supposed to fly to go see Donnie Nelson in Dallas.
Dang.
Said, if you can't work out, ain't no need to come.
For sure.
So that hits me. Man. Like, it's right there on the table and I mess it up.
Mm.
So then I have to go back to my team, still coming off of this ankle thing. I was in a boot for like 3 weeks. So I get back to my team. Again, I'm coming off player of the year. I re-signed my deal. I'm thinking everything is just, we about to do our thing. And they get a new coach. Serbian coach at that. No disrespect to any Serbians.
Sure.
They one of the toughest, hardest players I know. But he was very upfront that he didn't like Americans or necessarily our style of play.
For sure.
And so me and him started riffing off top. He was like, I want you, believe it or not, I had dreads at the time. You probably know that because you know me. But
yeah.
I had dreads and, I had the hair thing going on. And he was just like, he need to cut his hair, like his style of play. And it's like, I'm the dude. Like, who are you?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I ended up getting traded to Israel. So now I'm thinking everything's getting funny now. They send me to Israel. I'm on the same deal. Both teams are paying me. So I'm like, whatever. At this point, the business is starting to take control.
Right.
In my head. I'm not thinking about grinding and hooping and all the things that got me here.
Right.
Now I need to get my check.
Right.
I'm at that point in my career where it's just like, if y'all not paying me, I'm not doing nothing.
Mm.
And so I go to Israel. I kind of halfway go through things just because I'm getting 2 checks. I'm like, man, they just sent me here, to get old boy out.
For sure.
And then I'm going to go back. And then I go back. Craziest thing, man. I break my hand. You're shaking your head, but you need to hear the rest of it. My first game back to my old team. I had cut my hair at that time, not because of him, but just because I was at a different point.
Right.
I break my hand. Had surgery and everything. Break my hand on Antonio Grant's knee. my old teammate.
Right.
First game back, coming off a ball screen, I break my hand. So I'm out for really 2 months.
Right.
My team brings in another cat, you know, to fill my roster spot, basically, because I was there just kind of as the backup PG at this point, and then I break my hand. They bring in another cat, so now I'm the one guy out off the roster.
Right.
They end up winning the ULEB Cup, which is one of the second biggest cup other than EuroLeague. They fly me over there. I'm with the team, everything, celebration, confetti, all this other stuff. They start handing out the little jerseys and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I didn't get, like, I don't have a jersey. Then I find out I'm not on the 14 roster. All right. So y'all fly me way over here. We do all this other stuff. And at that time I could play. I was out my cast and everything, but they had already signed the other guy, right?
For sure.
So I'm like, all right, you know, what's up with that? So we get back, and then they start getting funny with the money. That's when everything just started going south. And I was just like, man, this is BS. I signed this deal for this amount for these many years.
Wow.
What's up? And then that's when I started learning the business. I started calling folks back home. I think Jamie Watson was trying to tell me, like, man, that's just how it is. Melvin, I called Melvin, and he's like, that's just how it is. I'm like, this ain't right, bro. Like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what we as kids dream of.
For sure.
Is to put in all this work, to do all this other stuff. I'm doing my part. You got to do your part. And so after that, the whole love of the game was gone.
That's crazy.
Like the business aspect of everything took over. So my last 3.5 years of hooping was just, you gonna pay me, I'll be there.
Right.
And it was really, I'm a hoop off of just the strength of it. Like, I wasn't putting in no work. I would hoop during the summer a little bit, but I wasn't like
going after it like that.
No. At that point, NBA was gone. I messed that up. At least in my mind, you get what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, all the things that I thought I was setting myself up for were gone.
Well,
so those last couple years, I was just going through the motions.
So what would you, like I said, you know, we didn't have any pioneers kind of painting that picture for us. What would you tell the student athletes leaving college, going overseas? What would you tell them, you know, as far as preparing for that next level so they don't get caught up in the same situation that you get caught up in?
I mean, I learned a lot of things later on that didn't hit me until later on. So I played with guys that played in the league. I played with Dickie Simpkins, who played on the Bulls teams when they were on their runs. Played with Sherrell Ford, who played for the Seattle Supersonics. Again, Steve Woodbury, who played in the league, was a legend overseas. Ed Cota was like a big brother overseas for me. So, you know, learning the business, you know, is one thing, because that's the dream that we're trying to get to. And I try to tell young student athletes this now. Where you're preparing to go, you have to prepare in every aspect of it. Because it's not so much the physical aspect, it becomes mental. The higher up you go, it becomes mental. And so what I tell young people now is set goals, right? And stay focused on the goals, not anything outside of the goals. If you put up your numbers, if you achieve your goals, if you get those championships, your Player of the Year awards, MVP, whatever it is that's on your goal sheet, stick to that, and that'll keep driving your love for the game. When you start getting outside of that box, right? Because I never put money down.
Sure.
I always wrote, when I started writing my goals, it was always numbers. I felt like if I hit the numbers, the money will take care of itself. And it started doing that.
Good point.
But where I went wrong was I deviated from my goal sheet and I only started focusing on the dollar. And so what I try to tell people now is stick to your goal sheet. Set goals. The college kids I work out now, the pro kids I train, even the high school kids, I need to see your goals. What are your numbers? And we're going to focus on the numbers, like your personal numbers, what you're trying to achieve. If you stick to that plan, everything else that you want to see happen will happen if you work and earn it. And so, for me, looking back, hindsight, I'm thankful for going through that experience because,
Sure.
again, I can't take away, I played, 6 years overseas.
For sure.
5.5, 6 years. And so from a kid from Columbia, and I always say by way of Charleston, to be able to go from there to not knowing about college, to be able to go to college, get a degree, go from there to travel the world for free.
Mm.
My experience, I was supposed to go through that.
For sure.
To help tell somebody else because nobody told me.
For sure.
And so, the whole thing is to always maintain your focus on what got you there.
Gotcha.
It happened to me in college, right? When Fogler left, I started forgetting what BJ did in 1993.
Mm.
Right? When I became a pro, I started forgetting my goal sheet, which was always driven by what BJ did in 1993.
For sure.
So, the thing for any young hooper, if you desire, because there's an expectation that comes with success. We're seeing it now with Naomi Osaka. We're seeing it with Simone Biles. We see it with, all our professional athletes.
Right.
Higher you go, the expectations are going to be set. You have to uphold to a standard, but your standard should only be based on your goals.
That's
That's
awesome.
just my opinion.
That's awesome.
He made a name for himself as a star for the College of Charleston basketball teams in the mid to late 90s. And now, Jermel President is doing what he can to make sure that the Charleston area kids have a chance to succeed on the court and in life.
So I want to, give some of that back to the community as well. After college and after playing professionally, I started the Day Foundation just to be that wealth of knowledge to the kids in the community and parents as well.
College of Charleston Hall of Famer Jermel President said he saw a need for this while he was in school. So he founded the nonprofit Day Foundation. And its philosophy for success is based on what he calls his oatmeal recipe.
Let's go and finish together.
Basically teaches the game of basketball, focusing on skills, development, nutrition, and education. Not only SAT, ACT type stuff, but education for parents in how to navigate through the different levels of athletics.
In closing, we do something called the oatmeal recipe, which is nutrition, education, and skill development. And I think that can go along with any sport, any career, what have you. Those three ingredients are very important. And talking about skill development, what's your take on skill development? And not saying just the skill development on the court, but skill development comes from listening. Listening skills. How important is skill development to you, and how do you apply it to your everyday life?
Well, I've been training kids and players for almost 10 years now, and you have to educate yourself. That goes with anything that you're doing.
For sure.
Right? Nothing's going to happen overnight. Everything is earned. And earning something is a process.
For sure.
And so, my recipe is simple. Like your dreams only get greater by the work you put in. You set a goal, you chase that dream, you shatter that dream, and you set a new.
Yes, sir.
And so, to get to a point where you're at the highest level of your potential, politics aside, you're at the highest level of your potential, you have to appreciate what you did to get there. There are a lot of dudes, there are a lot of people that should be in the NBA. There's a lot of dudes that should be in the NFL. There's a lot of people that should have played at major Division I schools that ended up going NAIA, or that's fine.
For sure.
You can't be anybody but yourself. And if that's where that's where the path took you, then make the most of that.
That makes
Make
sense.
the most of that path, because that'll take you further, and that'll help you along the way more than anything else. My experience and what I went through, not having mentors and not having people has put me in the realm of education. Has put me in that process of not in that process, but being in the occupation of education as a school counselor, as being a coach, as being a trainer, as being a mentor. Because all those tools and not sticking to a goal sheet and having that heartbreak and having all that other stuff, that's what taught me to be the happiest that I am right now.
For sure.
I hadn't touched the basketball. I hadn't hooped, I would say. I touch basketball every day. I'm actually getting ready to go train some kids now. But I haven't hooped in almost 2 years, and I don't miss it. Like,
Right.
It doesn't affect me. I try to tell kids every day that we work, you got to focus on you.
Right.
Only focus on you and study your craft, master your craft.
And you said something about the next one, which is education. And I think you already kind of answered that, anyway, how important it is to learn every day. And I think you said you just got your master's in counseling. And I told you before, we started the conversation, I just enrolled in school as well. And being a leader, being a coach, being a trainer, being an athlete, being a competitor, like I felt like there was a void there because I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be able to learn about families and how to approach them situations so I could be more better at what I do. You know what I mean? That's the competitive nature in us. So you want to touch base just briefly on education and how do you apply the things that you're learning every day?
Say that one more time.
How do you apply the things that you're learning? Like education is important, but you're saying you're going to school, you got your master's and dealing with kids and families. How do you apply that? The things that you learn in your experience.
Well, I mean, from a counseling standpoint, obviously there's this big push on mental health. And I've always been a big proponent of knowing who you are, knowing where you come from. And so I've always read books on history, our culture. So as a counselor, I feel like it's important for me to apply that to training, because training, counseling, coaching is all the same. It all encompasses the same thing.
Yep.
So I don't go outside of my box very much.
For sure.
So, when it comes to coaching and training, you have to understand the game to appreciate the game. You have to study the game in order to grow in the game.
Right.
In education, it's the same thing. You gotta know, you have to know history to understand where you're going. It's an old, African proverb saying Koflin. You gotta look back in order to be able to go forward.
For sure.
So, everything that comes with counseling and the things that I learned at South Carolina State in their master's program in school counseling, it's stuff that I already practiced, and it's bits and pieces from people that taught me in different ways, and now I just get to take my experiences and try to make it fit the situation that's in front of me.
That's awesome.
So kids need to understand their past in order to understand where they are and where they're trying to go. And that's in basketball, that's in life, that's in education, that's in work. You got to know what you come from in order to fully represent who you are. You can't change who you are. You just got to fully represent it.
For sure. And lastly, nutrition. I say all the time, I hate to see athletes in AAU games or whatever, just eating, Skittles, drinking soda, eating fast food, and not putting the proper nutrients in their body. How important nutrition is to you, and how do you apply it to your everyday, especially coaching your teams and all that? How do you apply nutrition to your teams in your life?
Well, I didn't understand nutrition, even though we had a nutritionist in college. Well, we didn't. Our trainer was kind of our sub nutritionist, and they have them now, but I didn't really understand
Back
it.
then, our trainers just was giving us supplements. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. And making sure we ate the right thing on team meals and stuff like that. But now they actually have people that specialize in nutrition.
Exactly.
I didn't really appreciate that and understand it until I played and worked with pros. And once, they start to tell you, hey, you need to lay off this, you need to lay off that, it starts to make sense. And as you get older, i.e. one of our close friends that is coaching now that has gotten a little bit more robust, you start to understand the importance as an athlete. We've all gained weight. We kind of gotten out of our athletic element, and that's just time and years.
Right.
But I'm trying to maintain it.
Right.
In order for me to coach kids and tell them that, you got to eat right, I got to practice the same thing. I got to practice what I preach.
Yeah, look apart. Right.
Yeah. So, diet just as a whole in our culture is a big proponent of, our diseases, our stressors, a number of things that we go through. I look back over my career, over my life, and in moments where I really struggled. And I start to think about how much those Whoppers, those, the red rice and all the other stuff that we consume all the time played a factor into me not just having the energy that day, me mentally just not being there. Like, just thinking about all those things now, I try to incorporate it with coaching. I tell all the kids I train, listen, you can't come to me fresh off a milkshake or whatever else you eat, because I'm gonna run it out you. I don't care nothing about what you did until once you get in here, I only expect one thing. Right. And so, just trying to educate them and give them that knowledge earlier. Again, we both already alluded to, we didn't have it
for sure
growing up. So trying to give them that, passing that is vital, because, it's gonna take them a longer way than what we had. We had to figure it out. Now they have it. They just gotta apply it for themselves.
For sure. Well, Luke, man, that was a good, extensive, interview. And I think the community definitely appreciate the wealth of knowledge, hearing your story, and I think a lot of families will listen to that and help them redirect their approaches, their thought process into going into things. And that's kind of the reason why we do this podcast and I do my services, because I want to fill that void of athletes not having that information, moving forward that we did. And so I appreciate your time and, thanks for your info.
Yeah, for sure. And again, always big fan, brother. Sure. Watch you and AJ and Thad and Stead and all them boys back in the day. So always been a fan. I always watch from afar. I appreciate what you're doing. For anybody listening, again, it's all about application. Dreams only get greater by the work you put in. You got to set goals. You got to chase dreams. You got to shatter those dreams and go set new ones. So I appreciate it, brother. Anytime you need me, phone call away.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hey, do me a favor. Tell Sax my number. Tell him I should holler at me. When I used to live in Columbia, we used to kick it with X and Bovine and them boy when I was up there. But Sax was here. He went to St. Andrews for a little before he went to Columbia. He was down here. Yeah, I saw that man dribble out of a 3-man trap. You know what I'm saying? And he had handles before handles were even noticeable like that. So tell him I said what's up and pass the number on. Tell him I should give me a shout, man.
I will. That's my dude, man. His word is bond when it comes to basketball for me.
For sure. All right, man. Well, go get them kids ready, man. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.
Appreciate you. Peace.
All right, peace.
So there it goes, guys. Another one in the books. I want to thank Mr. Aaron Lucas for coming by and dropping some knowledge on how things is done, how work pays off. All right, we have trials and tribulations and we get through them. So again, thank you for coming on. Coming up next, we got NCAA Barrington Huntley in our third episode to talk more about the preparation of things coming up in this new school year. Has things changed with the NCAA or did they stay the same? Those things are very important to student athletes trying to get to the next level. All right. So look forward to the third interview, and we'll get all the information to you. We'll be right back.
What Jermel is doing with the Day Foundation and the approach he's taking to help develop young athletes, first of all, getting them prepared from the academic standpoint, which, as you know as well as I do, Bobby, that's the most important element, to try to get them to eat healthy, to be able to train properly, to get the proper education, and then hopefully for those who are talented enough to have a chance to move on to perhaps even get a free education by going off to college. But I love what Jermel is doing. It's a wonderful program. Hopefully more people in the community will get behind it, and some of the businesses involved as well, to help sponsor this program, because these are the kind of things that every community needs, looking out for the best interest of the youth. The future of this country is in our youth, and everything that we can do to help prepare them better for that is absolutely wonderful. And I can't express adequately enough my admiration and respect for what Jermel is doing, and hopefully he'll get a lot of help from a lot of people.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President, and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month.
York City.